Hello again. In this episode, we are going to address how to best invest in real estate. Now, this is a controversial topic because sometimes people think that the best way is to pay cash for a piece of real estate. But I assure you that some of the wealthiest people in America and the world do not pay cash for real estate. When they see a skyscraper or a building that they want to buy, they will turn to their money manager and go, what's the least amount of money that we can tie up to gain access or control of this building? They want to stay liquid. So I'm going to teach you how to use safe, positive leverage in this video. The ability to own and control assets with very little or none of your money tied up or at risk in that asset. And this will have a transformational change in your financial situation over 10, 20, 30 years. This is where my two sons in less than 10 years had net worths of $1.6 million by buying real estate the proper way. So there are three things you can do with money. You can spend it, lend it, or own with it. I guess you could give it away. But see, most people think, well, the best thing would be to own. I agree, but actually money in a lended position can also earn you great rates of return. When people ask me, Doug, what do you do? I own and loan on the same asset, and it makes exponentially higher growth of my money. So I mentioned that there are some miracles or marvels of wealth accumulation. The first is compound interest, and this is where our money can continue to double and quadruple and so forth. A dollar doubling 20 times to $2 to $4 to $8 to $16 to $32 will be worth $1 million after it doubles 20 times. That's compound interest. I prefer compounding tax free rather than taxed as earned, which I teach in another episode. But the third marvel or miracle of wealth accumulation is what I call safe, positive leverage. Now, what does that mean? To me, it is as simple as the parable of the talents in the Bible. In the New Testament, Matthew chapter 25, or Luke 19 is the parable of the pounds, where really in that parable, the harshest words spoken, they weren't even spoken to the woman taken in adultery, were thou wicked and slothful servant, I'm going to take it away from you, the one that buried his talent, and I'm going to give it to the one who has 10. Well, what did the one with 10 do? Doubled their talents from 5 to 10. One had 2 and doubled to 4. How did they do that? See, money works this way. There must be somebody who is paying interest in order to earn more interest. And there's also those who are earning money on that, but the people who are paying interest to make more interest are the mega wealthy thrivers. See, we hear people quip, there's two kinds of people in the world, those who pay interest and those who earn interest. And I go, no. There's a third kind of person. Those who learn when it's wise to pay interest in order to make more interest. Now, I can assure you that a wealthy real estate investor, when they go to purchase a property, they put the least amount down that they want to tie up so that they can have that money liquid and safe, because money trapped in the real estate is not liquid when you need it. When you need it the worst, it's the hardest to get. I learned that lesson clear back in 1982 when I could not sell my house in a down market. The equity in the property was just a number on a sheet of paper. So I want to have my money liquid. I don't want it trapped in the property. I want to have it safe so that when the house goes down in value, I don't lose. My money is over here. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is, where do you put money to where it is safer than in the real estate? See, a lot of people think a paid off piece of real estate is the ultimate goal or dream, and I've seen many of those people, when they needed money, they couldn't get it back out because you have to qualify to borrow. When you have your money in a liquid position like I do, in what I call my laser fund, I don't need to ask anybody's permission. I can access my money in less than 24 hours with an electronic funds transfer or a phone call. So you want to use the leverage where you have liquidity, because leverage without liquidity is stupidity. That is what gets people into trouble, is when they leverage by using OPM, other people's money, the bank's money, and then they don't have any liquidity. If I have access to my money and I use OPM, now I am becoming my own banker. So let me tell you what it means to become your own banker. So for 45 years, I have taught many people how to become their own banker. Now, what do banks do? See, banks borrow our money, and they might pay us 1 or 2 or 3% interest. Are they just a benevolent institution? No. Why we deposit our money in a bank, whether it's $10,000 or if we passed a hat around and collected $1 million, and we deposit it into a bank and they pay us 1%, let's say. That's $10,000 a year. Why do they do that? Is it just sitting in a vault? No, the bank turns around and loans that money. Now, truth be known, they take 30 to 40% of those tier 1 assets for liquidity and safety, and they put it into financial institutions ranked 6 notches higher in safety than they are. The multi-trillion-dollar insurance industry, where they earn 4 or 5%. Oh, wait a minute here. So they pay us 1%, $10,000, to borrow our million. And they turn around and they put it into an insurance institution and they earn 5%. How much more is 5 than 1? Now, some people say 4. No, it's 500% more. See, the bank pays $10,000 in interest to us who have our money in the bank. They actually turn around and increase the liquidity and the safety by 5 notches higher. You could bypass the middleman for long-term goals, which I teach in another episode. For long-term strategies, just bypass the middleman. You can put your money in the same insurance institution the banks put your money into and earn 5%. Okay, that's 50,000 instead of 10,000. That is 5 times. Let me word it this way. Would you hire an employee for 10,000 that made you an extra 50,000? Would you buy a widget machine for $10,000 that made you an extra 50,000? See, that's a 500% return, 5 times return on employment costs or equipment costs. That's what banks do. You can become your own banker and do the same thing. So for example, in 2007, December of that year, I could see the writing on the wall that we were going to have a major mortgage meltdown and crash. And so I refinanced my house to the hilt. And I took out that money, and let's say I borrowed that money at 4.5%. Actually, it was lower than that. But because it's tax deductible, which I always look to tax deduct my interest in some way or another, that I teach in many other episodes. But 4.5% interest, let's say on $1 million, that's $45,000. But I get to deduct that off my tax return. In a 33% tax bracket, it doesn't cost me $45,000 because I'm writing it off, and I get to save a third of that, or $15,000 in tax. So my net cost of the mortgage is $30,000. $30,000 is 3% of $1 million. Do you know where I put that money I borrowed out of my house? This is just me, but for liquidity and safety, I put it over into my laser fund, where from 2008 to 2012, 13, 14, 15, I earned an average of 8% net at the worst, in the worst portfolio. In the better portfolios, I earned 11 and netted 10. Let's just take the 9 netting 8. How much more is 8 than 3, or 9 than 3? It's 300%. There are many periods where I earned 10%. If I borrowed money at 3% tax deductible, it's a net cost of 2. And I made 10. How much more is 10 than 2? 500%. And that was the same period banks were borrowing our money at 1 and earning 5, loaning it back to us at 5, or putting it in an insurance company. So I'm my own banker. Banks are making 500%. I'm making 500%. We're both happy. People who do not understand this concept are unhappy. So the point is, there are many periods of time where I make 300% or 500%. In other words, the net cost of borrowing the money on the real estate might be 3, 2, 3.5, or 4. But if I borrowed at 6% in a 33% tax bracket, it's a net cost of 4%. Okay? There are many times I've earned 8% tax-free in my laser fund, for example. How much more is 8 than 4? Would you hire an employee for $40,000 that made you an extra $80,000? The key is when you do this, you have tremendous liquidity. If you have an emergency, you can access your money because it's not tied up. The real estate is going to go up in value, or if you use it for cash flow. So the best way in real estate is you've got to determine, are you wanting to get cash flow income sooner or later, or do you just want to buy, maybe fix up the property and flip it for a gain, and then you're going to have a capital gains tax. A lot of people like real estate because you can depreciate it, you can write off the interest. But when you understand safe positive leverage, it makes all the difference in the world. In fact, in another episode, I have a story of a man who refinanced his duplexes and fourplexes because he was killing his partner and he didn't realize it, Uncle Sam, paying it off. So he resurrected the deductions, and that allowed him to take money out of his IRAs or 401ks with no tax, because the new resurrected deduction offset the tax when he was taking money out of an IRA or 401k. If this is starting to arouse curiosity, I would strongly recommend you watch this video. And then if you want to understand how this all connects together in that video, you'll be invited, if you'd like, to get a free copy of one of my books. My most recent is The Laser Fund, and it will show you where I put my serious cash while I own my real estate. But the key takeaway is to leverage with liquidity, otherwise it's stupidity.